Without Stan Lee, so many of our favorite movies, comics, games, and shows wouldn't exist. Yet, thankfully, he was able to grace the Earth and share his imagination with us, giving us some of the most beloved superheroes of all time. Stan started cameoing in Marvel films in 2000 with the first X-Men film, and has gone on to cameo in so many movies, shows, and even games over the years. We're ranking his best appearances in movies, starting from the bottom and working our way to the top pick. Let us know if you agree or disagree with our selection. Many of the early Stan Lee cameos didn't have him say any dialogue, but that doesn't mean that they're any less impressive or memorable. Case in point, his cameo in the first Spider-Man film from 2002. It's a blink-and-you'll-miss-it appearance, but one that captures the spirit of a hero perfectly. When Green Goblin attacks Times Square and vaporizes the Oscorp board members, a bunch of debris falls down into the crowd below. Stan Lee is one of the citizens who shields a child amidst all the chaos, sending the message to viewers everywhere that you don't need a mask or a cape to be a hero. Stan Lee's cameo in Spider-Man 2 is oddly similar to the one he had in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. It's really quick, so quick that you might have missed it entirely on your first viewing. Heck, you may not even remember offhand when it is. During the immediate aftermath to the bank robbery scene, Doc Ock and Spidey are fighting on the side of a building. Thanks to Dr. Octopus's arms, debris continuously falls down below towards civilians. Ever the hero, Stan pulls another bystander from harm's way, reinforcing the message that while Spider-Man is doing heroic things up there, everyday folk can be heroes as well. Everyone seemed to love Netflix's Daredevil show. It was true to the comics, and we got a great performance from Charlie Cox. But that wasn't the only attempt to bring the man without fear to the screen. In 2003, Ben Affleck would don the red suit, and fans weren't too particularly welcoming to the movie, which can be seen as mediocre at best. While Stan Lee had a photo cameo in the show, he did show up in the movie to be saved by the child Matt Murdock. Not paying attention to the road thanks to reading a newspaper, Stan is almost hit by a bus, but is saved by the blind boy. You can imagine his surprise at what just transpired. As of late, whenever Marvel creator Stan Lee shows up in movies, he's basically playing a version of himself or as an uncredited character. But the same can't be said for the 2004 film Fantastic Four. Sure, the movie wasn't particularly well received at the time, and it has not aged well.
Let me explain.
But fans can at least look back and see a fun and unique Stan Lee cameo in this movie. In the movie, Stan Lee plays the postman Willie Lumpkin, a character who first appeared in the comics back in 1963 in Fantastic Four number 11. Willie Lumpkin would go on to become the Fantastic Four's mailman and would make frequent visits to Baxter Tower. Stan Lee honors his minor character by bringing him to life on the big screen. The first Ant-Man film proved a lot of naysayers wrong by delivering a fun, light-hearted movie that was big on action and laughs. Paul Rudd proved to be an unexpectedly fun superhero, and the script was definitely on the funnier side. The funniest scene of the movie, however, featured the Stan Lee cameo. While retelling a story, Michael Peña's Louise quickly bounces around a flashback. In a matter of seconds, we go from an art gallery to a lounge with Louise's friend Ignacio. The bartender in the scene who agrees with Ignacio that the girl was crazy stupid fine was Stan Lee. It's a quick, hilarious scene. After a few years of so-so Marvel movies, Iron Man shocked everyone by being pretty great. It also opened the floodgates for the MCU and the promise of greater things to come. And boy oh boy did they. The first Iron Man movie had heart, action, and laughs, and of course, a Stan Lee cameo. While walking down the red carpet, Tony Stark sees an old-timer in a snazzy outfit surrounded by models. Tony gives him a quick pat and greets Hugh Hefner, the late founder of Playboy magazine. Only it wasn't Hugh, it was Stan Lee, who both looks the part and looks confused that someone got him mixed up with Hefner. Thor: The Dark World ranks pretty low on the MCU favorite scale for many people, but it did give us a good chuckle when it comes to the Stan Lee cameo. The whole plot of the movie revolves around the Convergence, which sees portals to the 9 realms eclipsing over one another. The Dark Elf Malekith wants to use this to unleash the ether into the universe, flooding it with darkness. Sounds like a job for the Avengers, not just one man. While in a mental health hospital for supposed insanity, Selvig explains the Convergence to his fellow patients by using shoes. One of them is Stan Lee, who asks Selvig,
Can I have my shoe back?
The Avengers was a movie experience unlike any other at the time. After a few years of hype, Earth's mightiest heroes would rally together on the big screen, under the direction of Joss Whedon no less, to give us a superhero film for the ages. But the film was nearly over, and there was still no sign of Stan Lee. He thankfully showed up, minutes before the end in a news clip. He actually shot a second cameo for an extended Captain America scene that was ultimately cut from the film, where he tells Cap to ask for the waitress's number and stop being a moron. Cap said it himself. He's the expert on waiting too long. Fans had to sit through quite a bit of Captain America the Winter Soldier before getting their Stan Lee cameo. But it was well worth the wait, as it was hysterical. When Cap, Falcon, Black Widow, and Maria Hill decide to attack S.H.I.E.L.D. to prevent Project Insight from happening, Cap decides he needs a new uniform to inspire, or rather an old uniform. His Second World War attire was housed in the Smithsonian, and Cap broke in and took it back. The security guard on duty that night was Stan Lee, who explains he's so fired after losing Cap's uniform on his watch. "It's okay, Stan, it was of more use out there in the field than on display." The first Thor movie was the total complete opposite of what would eventually come in Thor Ragnarok. It was serious, with clear and obvious Shakespearean roots thanks to director Kenneth Branagh. But while the film was more serious and dramatic than most of the MCU movies, it did have a pretty hilarious Stan Lee moment. Of course, we're referring to the part where the citizens of the small New Mexico town have a barbecue by the crater and try to yank Mjolnir from the ground. Stan Lee is the man behind the wheel of a pickup truck trying to pull it free. When Mjolnir pulls the pickup off the truck, Stan Lee believes he's the one who pulled the hammer out, only he was oh so wrong. Where there are superheroes, there always seems to be conflict. Vision kinda had a point there in Civil War, and that idea extends to the comic books as well. Of course, being Marvel, many of the stories took place in New York City, which means the city has seen its fair share of unusual activity. In Infinity War, the Black Order lands over the city in search of the Time Stone. When Ned sees the giant spaceship, he and his classmates all freak out, giving Parker some time to escape. Their bus driver, though, Stan Lee, as the writer of many of these stories, has seen many ships and aliens in New York, and isn't all that concerned about another one over the Big Apple. Okay, so X-Men Apocalypse wasn't the best of X-Men movies. After the success of First Class and Days of Future Past, the franchise sort of got derailed with the introduction of Apocalypse and his quest to destroy the world. Thankfully, the movie did include one heck of a great Stan Lee cameo. As nukes go flying, Stan Lee can be seen hugging his wife Joan. What makes this scene even more heartwarming, yet sad, is that Joan would pass away around a year after this scene, making this the last time she would appear on screen. Regardless, it's still great to see someone as beloved as Stan Lee get immortalized with his wife on screen in the mandatory cameo scene. Okay, so Spider-Man 3 was easily the weakest of the three Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. But ironically, it gave us the best Stan Lee cameo in the entire trilogy. Fans seem to remember the movie most for its cringy dance scenes, the finger-snapping scene, and a disservice to Venom.
I thought maybe I was the wrong person to play the role.
But underneath all of that, there's a nice Stan Lee cameo to remember. A driving theme with Stan's works is that while there are bad things going on in the world, anyone can step up and be a hero. Upon seeing that Spider-Man will receive the key to the city, Stan walks up next to Peter and confides to him that anyone really can be a hero. Enough said. Everyone knows there's a particular bond between Spider-Man and Stan Lee. Stan co-created the character with Steve Ditko, and thus, he has a particular affinity with the webhead. That love for the character extended to his cameo in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. In the film, Peter Parker graduates from high school, only he can't simply show up on time like a normal teenager. He was out being Spider-Man moments before he was called. As he swung in, he changed but forgot to remove his mask. Stan Lee, being the only one to notice this, explains that he thinks he knows that guy. It's a nice way to show the bond between co-creator and character. Captain America the First Avenger was a fun and interesting look at Cap's origin story set against the backdrop of the Second World War. Steve Rogers went from scrawny and unfit for combat to become the greatest soldier that ever was. It wasn't long until Cap ditched his song and dance gig and was storming Hydra bases, rescuing hundreds of soldiers and earning him a medal for bravery. But Cap didn't show up to his own ceremony. When called out, a suit came forward to reveal discreetly that Rogers was nowhere to be found. Stan Lee thought that this aide was Captain America, and commented that he thought he'd be taller. You're not wrong, Stan. Thor Ragnarok was a wacky, unusual, and unexpected film that threw out the Thor formula and tried something new. The film was more of a comedy that stripped away everything we've come to expect from Thor, including his hammer and his trademark hair. While a prisoner on the planet Sakaar, Thor is forced to have his hair cut. His barber? Stan Lee, sporting some crazy contraption to cut Chris Hemsworth's hair. Stan also confides in the God of Thunder that his old hands aren't as steady as they once were. Considering the number of claws and spinners on Lee's shaky hands, it's amazing Thor's hair turned out as well as it did. Do you prefer long-haired or short-haired Thor? Let us know! Black Panther won big with audiences and critics alike, earning a bunch of Oscar noms and made more money than Infinity War internationally. Bet Marvel wished they had put more Black Panther in the third Avengers film in hindsight, huh?
Show off.
But that feeling of rolling in the dough must have been set in stone thanks to Stan Lee's cameo in this one. Upon hearing that Claw is in South Korea, Black Panther and Okoye head to an underground casino to intercept and bring him in. Who else should be at this illicit casino? Well, that would be Stan Lee's cameo, of course, who seemingly moves all of T'Challa's chips to his side of the table. Hilariously, he's credited as the thirsty gambler, so bear that in mind next time you watch the movie. Venom was an oddity of a film. It wasn't too well received by critics, and many fans questioned if you could even do a Venom movie without Spider-Man. Keeping your head up seems to be the moral of the story when it comes to the Venom movie, and Stan Lee's cameo in that entry seems to echo that idea. When Brock leaves his ex-fiancée, we see Lee show up next to him, confiding that neither one of him should give up on her, which also suggests he knows Eddie is Venom, because of course he would. Stan Lee has always had pretty funny and tame cameos throughout his career. That all changed relatively quickly when he showed up in the first Deadpool movie. We've all become pretty accustomed to PG-13 superhero films, but Deadpool and Logan have shown us that you can still have a good time and make serious money with the R rating. Making use of that edgier rating, the Stan Lee cameo is much more risque than we're used to in Deadpool. Here, he's the MCU at a raunchy rundown club, giving the ladies of the poll a shout-out. Definitely not your mama Stan Lee cameo. But the unexpected nature of the cameo made this one both funny and instantly memorable. Stan Lee has shown Spider-Man a lot of love throughout his cameos, but things definitely unexpectedly changed when the MCU took control of the web-slinger and rebooted him into the MCU. Maybe Stan was just tired of so many attempts at making a Spider-Man movie in so few years. Early on in the movie, the young Spider-Man can be seen doing various activities throughout Queens. Of course, he may have been overzealous with his crime stopping. Spidey causes more problems in this montage, and Stan Lee threatens him with a good old "don't make me come down there, punk." Thankfully, we know Stan Lee loves Spider-Man, and he wouldn't actually want to throw down with the web-slinger. Nonetheless, it was a good laugh seeing Stan act out of character. Stan Lee would of course make a return for the second Avengers film, and die-hard fans of the Scribe's work got a serious kick out of his brief yet hysterical scene. After securing Loki's scepter and stopping Strucker and Hydra, the Avengers get together for a party at Avengers Tower. It's not just for the superpowered though, as other guests are at this party, including some war vets. One of these vets is Stan Lee. He asks for a shot of Thor's drink, which is said to be 8,000 years old. But Lee stormed the beaches at Normandy. He could take it, right? Wrong. Lee's taken away looking petrified, muttering his trademark motto, Excelsior, which is Latin for ever upwards. Ant-Man and the Wasp arguably has one of the funniest Stan Lee cameos of all time. It's also impossible to miss, like many of the later Marvel movies. As we're sure you know, the cameo takes place during the vehicle chase scene. Deciding she can get things done better herself, Wasp relinquishes control of the van and decides to take on their pursuers herself. She uses the shrinking technology to dispose of the goons, including shrinking a motorcycle which sends the rider flying. One such attack misses its mark, and she hits Stan Lee's car. Stan then exclaims that these 60s were fun, but now he's paying for it, alluding to some psychedelic times back in the day. While it's always fun to see Stan Lee in Marvel films, one has to wonder how it all makes sense. Sure, it's all for the laughs, but there is usually an in-universe explanation for these kinds of scenarios. Things only got harder to explain when the Marvel films became one unified universe within the MCU. So, Guardians Volume 2 did the only logical thing when it came to Stan's cameos. They showed him talking to a group of Watchers, recounting his time as a delivery man in Civil War. This led fans to believe that all of Stan's cameos, at least in the MCU, feature the same Stan across the movies, making him some kind of higher being. It makes sense. Captain Marvel is the most recent MCU film, and the piece of the puzzle before Endgame storms into cinemas. It's also the first MCU movie to release after Stan's passing, and as such, the filmmakers decided to take the opportunity to do something unique with a Stan Lee cameo. Along with a quick boss cameo and nod to Mallrats, the film instead gave us something pretty powerful, memorable, and poignant. During the opening Marvel studio roll, they decided to play a whole bunch of Stan Lee cameos, as opposed to clips of their heroes, because Stan is the biggest hero of them all, and Stan Lee is Marvel. It was a nice way to start the film off. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse won big at the award shows this year. It was a critical darling, and fans simply loved it. It sadly also marked the first Stan Lee cameo since his passing in 2018. Fans mourned the loss of the iconic and marvelous writer, but also rejoiced in his accomplishments, and that he lived a long and full life. Spider-Verse paid a touching tribute to him in the form of Stan Lee working as a costume store clerk, who reminds Miles being a hero is an internal thing, and isn't conditional on the size of a costume. Of course, the touching moment also gets a cheeky laugh, as we see that all costume sales are final, which doesn't help Miles, who is too big for his tribute Spider-Man costume. And those are our ranked choices for the best Stan Lee cameos in Marvel movies. Do you agree with our choices? What's your favorite Stan Lee cameo of all time? And what is your favorite character that he created? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like it in your playlist every day. Thanks for watching, and Excelsior!